for town meeting. Jay was an uncontested candidate for re-election, so you'll continue to be a local legislator and represent your constituents in precinct 8, is it? Yes, that's great. Well, congratulations.
This will be my 3rd term. Yep. So let's go over the ballot and have a little circling of the wagons here. We've got our moderator, of course, is for a 3rd-year term, is David Vieira, and he ran uncontested.
He did. David will mark his 20th anniversary, I think, as the moderator in our community. And I was chatting with him yesterday. Of course, he also serves as one of the 2 state representatives in town, and I was at an event where the representative was there. And when he was first elected, this is just a neat little bit of political history here in Falmouth, it was to fill out an unexpired term. And so the votes were actually made by the elected town meeting members to fill that vacant seat, if you remember.
And that was Mr. Marshall?
When Bob Marshall had stepped down, that's correct. And so it was a hard-fought victory for David for that first time. And I can remember being in a liquor store, actually, on Main Street with a list of town meeting members and my old friend Ron Braga, and calling up town meeting members to get them to support our now 20-year veteran moderator. So he's done a fine job.
You really have.
Yeah, I don't know of anyone that has a better grasp of parliamentary procedure. And
that particular parliamentary rule of order is times meeting time, correct?
That's a really good point. So most people think that town meeting is run by Robert's Rules of Order, and it's not.
It's not.
It's run by a book called Town Meeting Time.
Right.
And so it's similar, but a sort of modified version that's a little different. And so there's another little tidbit for you FCT viewers out there. If you're really interested in how town meeting is run, go on Amazon and get a copy of Town, or better yet, go down to 8 Cousins and get a copy of Town Meeting Time.
That's right. And when I first moved to Falmouth, that was one of the interesting components. I saw David in action, and I said, he really has a grasp of parliamentary authority. Which one is he using? And that's when I was introduced to time meeting time. And I met a couple of the authors, more recent authors of it as well. I considered myself very fortunate.
Excellent.
Yeah, yeah. So. I'm not sure that I got that. You want to?
Sure. So we have been, in the early going here, discussing a little bit about question 1 on the ballot. Again, that's the question seeking the authorization to borrow money to construct a turf field and to move the football program to the high school. We do have a package that was constructed today for some interviews related to that. So let's go to the package.
Here at Falmouth High School is the location for voting for precincts 3 and 6, and a stone's throw away from the proposed site of question 1, the athletic turf field for Falmouth. Question 1 asks Falmouth voters to approve a Prop 2.5 debt exclusion override to fund a $3.1 million multi-purpose field complex to be constructed at Falmouth High School. This project scope would include an artificial turf field, bleachers for 800, a press box with ADA-compliant lift, concessions, restrooms, field lighting, and perimeter fencing. According to information presented by school officials at town meeting, approval of the project would allow for a multi-purpose field complex to be constructed at Falmouth High School on a field adjacent to the current track fields and basketball courts. This athletic complex would be utilized by the Falmouth High School football team, boys and girls soccer teams, field hockey team, boys and girls lacrosse teams, marching band, and made available to local youth teams when not used by the district. Voter turnout was steady throughout the morning hours here at Falmouth High School, with most voters coming out to determine question 1.
I think question 1 is important for our community and our students, and I also support the fact that there will be a playground that the whole community can use. I think it's important for the youth and having a space that everyone can use.
The biggest thing I think on question 1 is I wish they had separated the question of moving the field as opposed to making it an artificial turf, because I think those are 2 separate issues, and I'm more in favor of one than the other.
Well, I voted for question 1 because I think the football program should be at the high school where it would be more convenient. The question of I'm a little iffy one way or another on the turf or the artificial turf, but I think the field should go ahead. It will provide access for children's programs. I've been to Plymouth when I went there for a marching band contest, and they have a beautiful field there that's multi-purpose. I'm also in favor of the senior center, which seems to coincide with this vote, whether it's yay or nay, moving the playground and whatever they're going to be doing behind Gus Canty.
This is Ryan Weber from Falmouth High School, FCTV News reporting.
Thank you, Ryan. Great job there. We appreciate your efforts there at the high school to give us a little texture and background on the debate surrounding question 1 on today's ballot. If you're just tuning in, I'm Troy Clarkson, and this is my friend and compatriot, Jay Zavala. We are providing live election coverage here on FCTV. And to continue our discussion on question 1 and to review other issues and just talk about the election in general, we are thrilled to have live in studio the chairman of our Board of Selectmen, Susan Moran. Sue, it's great to have you here tonight.
Thanks, Troy. Thank you, Jay. Happy to be here. This has been a really busy day going around at the polls. I've heard the turnout is sort of in the medium. I think a lot of people thought it would be a little bigger with the question 1 and the fields coming out, but the weather's a little iffy, so I'm not shocked.
We snuck in. If you can hear the pitter-patter out there, if you're watching this on your mobile device or at home, it's not pitter-patter, it's pouring right now, and we got in here to the studio just in time. But it doesn't appear that there was a large storm going on out there in this election. It was a pretty quiet election season, except for question 1. There was a lot. We were talking before you came in the studio, Sue, about the activism and how great it's been to see young people get engaged and involved in the electoral process. And what's been your experience with question 1 of what have you seen out there?
Well, I'm very heartened to see the young folks really pounding the pavement, doing the research, getting the message out. When I drove in to vote myself, I saw, Grace Peterson was there and Laura Peterson. There was a mother-daughter, tag team for question 1. And I thought that really was symbolic of what this election has done in the commonality of the various concerns that have come up. The gun issue got a lot of young folk really riled up appropriately, and they wanted their voices heard. That's continued in Falmouth with respect to question 1, and it brought to mind, one of the initiatives the Board of Selectmen has been doing recently in terms of reaching out, first with our committee members. The next couple of things we're going to be looking at, and I bet Selectmen Megan English Braga and Doug Brown will be giving a report, but switching 2 things. One is for staff input and customer service and things that, staff would appreciate to make their jobs more enjoyable. And on the other hand, segueing to connecting with the schools. We have a lot of joint meetings. I'm expecting with the new superintendent and the school committee, I've already spoken with members of the school committee, a couple of them, on the idea of having a joint meeting where our committees might be able to connect with young folks on civic engagement, whether it's made a little bit of the curriculum or maybe it's part of the volunteer program. When you think about the resources that Falmouth has, we are foundational with our talented and very generous volunteers. You look at what Betsy Gladfelder just recently did with the Coonamessett River Project, and so many organizations, 20 of them or something when I was emceeing that event, and I know you were there, that you thought about all of the giving and the time that's involved that saves taxpayers money. And as this generation moves on, we have to be cognizant of feeding the next generation the tools, the information, and the excitement about what you get from volunteering. So I see a little bit of that with question 1. When you see young people and parents and folks wanting to do something great for the town going into the future, have a new field which will allow us to rest some of our fields and maybe get by with reasonably financially sound process of getting more fields to the Recreation Committee so that they can be used with the, with young athletes. So it's a marathon. It's not going to be a sprint, but if question one passes, we're going to get off to a jump start.
Excellent. You mentioned toward the end of your remarks the financial aspect of this. And Jay, one of the things I heard in my travels around town, and I'd be interested in your perspective, was that a lot of the support came from the fact that the town, and particularly the Board of Selectmen, have effectively managed the town's finances in a way where we had retiring debt that we were able to replace with this project, so that a yes vote, even though it would be authorizing the expense of $3 million, would not have an impact on our taxes. And the discussions that I had around town with folks, that was a really important
That was
factor.
a compelling observation. Very, very lucid, very clear, unambiguous. Our finances are in good order, and there isn't that component to trip over. I was struck, Susan, as we were listening to you talk about the ballot and the question, that you're actually drilling beyond the ballot to the process, and you see an opportunity here for us to galvanize around our next generation and give them that invitation into the process.
I say keep the momentum going.
Right.
Exactly right. And in terms of the projects coming forward, we have to have that foundation of good financial stability. And I've got to credit the town manager and the finance director, Jennifer Petit, because the Board of Selectmen gave a mandate and goal to the town manager when he came to Falmouth. And in the prior board, before our current board, it's really been something that was an opportunity to grow. It had to be built back. We had some financial challenges like most of the Cape, most of the towns, and we are up to that AAA rating at this point, which really means that we can stretch our finances a little bit more, do more projects, and not be so dependent upon just taking more of our taxpayers' money out of their pockets. So it really is a great tool, and I really have to give credit to the town manager, like I said, finance director, and again, the staff, because we do come back to the staff and department heads looking at their own finances, being very circumspect, looking at needs to have, nice to have, and really working together with management. I think Peter Johnson-Staub has been a good addition to that, and working with staff, and we expect more great things to come in the future. Very excited to see who's going to be whether it's the incumbent or we have a new member on the Board of Selectmen. We really have a great board, so we expect to get a lot more done this year as well.
And to Troy's observation about what we've all been listening to out on the street, that component of the financial aspect of it is pretty well covered. The other discussion about environmental issues and concerns, I think there again, we found that the authorities, those very much in the know, were able to shed more light than doubt on that process as well.
I'm glad you brought that up. That was the school committee. I credit them incredibly. They really are experts at outreach, using tools, social media, really digging in, as you said, getting those facts out, and then the community to really, kind of mull those facts over and have a very respectful, intelligent, competitive discussion, those for and against. You look at the signs around town, there's quite a lot of activity on the question. There were some issues about where the signs were placed, and I have actually put on the agenda for the next meeting. The selectmen will have a discussion about signs, because the public has called to our attention. We've got to kind of take a look at those rules and shore them up a little bit. So you'll be seeing that process, Jay. You're right.
It's always very important.
Thank you.
You can't
Right.
leave anybody out of the discussion, not on process.
True.
Right. Absolutely. So, back to the question itself, question number one. The tone that I've been picking up on is that question number one is going to get favorable traction in our community. That's what I've been.
Well, if you look at the young folks out there doing the car wash at, while I was standing at the Stop and Shop corner, you saw a lot of younger folks out there waving, holding signs. There's that #1 hand that I think I've got to credit Laura Peterson. She's really dove into this issue, and a lot of folks. I know Troy was mentioning. I heard in the sound booth a discussion on FCTV that you really got folks together and both sides of the issue or talked it up. I thought that was interesting. I saw a few quotes from that.
It was fascinating. Jay and I were discussing that forum that was here on FCTV last week because we had such a broad perspective and a broad spectrum of community members. We had Dr. Paul Diamond, who's an orthopedic surgeon, and Gary Schneider, who's a medical research doctor, and Bob Antonucci, who's a doctor of a different sort and was a president of a university. But then on the flip side of that, we had Kyla Azzato, who was a student athlete who has played on turf fields and played on grass elsewhere, and her coach. And then, of course, the leader of the Vote Yes on One, Scott Gelfie, local businessman, volunteer extraordinaire, one of the leaders of the road race. And so there was a cross-section of the community, and it was just amazing to me to see thoughtful, reasoned, researched debate. And again, whether you supported or opposed that question, the fact that people from diverse walks of life in this community came together, had a respectful discussion. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say what happened there is a model for what's not happening in Washington. And people were able to come together and be respectful toward one another, but get their point across. And there's just so much of that missing in our public discourse today. But here in Falmouth, even outside question 1, I think the election itself, with some contested races, particularly for selectmen and school committee, the candidates have been very respectful toward one another. They clearly have different views, but we were able to have a really good, positive, thoughtful election season. And, not all communities can say that.
Oh my gosh, League of Women Voters did a terrific job again, really allowing an opportunity for folks at home to tune in and hear the candidates in their own words. And I really, having been on that side of the table myself, it's nice when you get a prepared question so that you can kind of get your airspeed and, in terms of it can be, a little nerve-wracking being, in a public forum that way if you're not used to constantly campaigning. And so I thought, all the candidates had an opportunity, particularly school committee, to really let folks know who they are and what they think in terms of priorities. So there's a lot of races. I'm really intrigued to, I'll head back. I know that Deb Rogers is at Town Hall just ripping those results off. You guys will be adding it up, and, eventually there'll be a gathering, Liam's or, elsewhere. And just that excitement about counting the numbers and walking in the door and seeing if your candidate is, how close is it, or the candidate, themselves, bunch of guys this time, and really, I'm sure, all on the edge of their seats. I mean, this should be, when you did see the signs around town, you did see, a lot of excitement, and, that's just part of it. I think that, the political process in Falmouth is just so really, people are knowledgeable and it's vibrant, and it really does get everyone's juices stirred up, and like you say, the key is to keep it balanced. So I'm really excited to see the results, and the question, I know it's too early to predict, but let's just say I'm crossing my fingers.
Typically when we do these shows, I'm not shy about making predictions. And so I'll make a prediction. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that question 1 will pass by a fairly comfortable margin. But also, that as we've talked about on this show for years, and we've talked on this show with you, Sue, in past years, that might be dependent somewhat on the geography of the community. and the endorsement of question one won't be as strong in the southwest corner of town as it is elsewhere. Just a prediction based on my research and what I've heard, but we'll see. And you know, we've talked for years on this show about how the turnout in some neighborhoods in town is much higher.
Sure.
Tends to be higher in Sippowisset and Woods Hole in downtown Falmouth than it is in the rest of the town.
Mark Finneran has worked hard this year to turn that around. He's put voters on the hot seat and said, from his perspective, if you want me, you got to get out there and vote. And you know, it's will be interesting. I think he's done a very good job this year. I'm you know, really, I'm not making any predictions. I'm very interested to see how that works. He's been a very motivating in, you know, I think in terms of the get the vote out.
It's going to be fascinating to see.
I'm curious, being willing to go out on a limb with regard to question one, I have a slightly different take. I think that the opposition is galvanized enough to influence the discourse long after the votes are counted. I think this is going to be a continuing discussion, that input is going to be drawn from all quarters. No one is giving up the ghost. Everyone is engaged in this process. Those that are concerned for our environment will continue to be concerned for the environment, and making certain that their interests are not being forgotten just simply because the vote was lost. Speaking for myself, when I first moved here, my first concern was that I was moving into a community with a sole source aquifer. That was my first concern. And then I raised my hand to serve on the Cape Cod Commission because I wanted to gain a broad perspective of some of the other concerns and issues in our community. So I think that I have to share your view that question one appears to be headed towards success, but I think there's still a lot more to be dealt with in making certain that we get something that's really good, outstanding, and everybody has their say in this matter.
But I think that goes back to what we've seen during the discussion on this issue, and that is that there has been room
Correct.
in the dialogue
Correct.
for all points of view, and no one's been shut out, and there have not been any really contentious or disrespectful debates, by and large. Most of it overwhelmingly, most of it has been very positive, so that the folks who may dissent will still have a seat at the table.
They will indeed.
And that's really important. And that is a credit to folks like Scott Gelfi, who were behind the support for the question, but all throughout the process welcomed dissenting views and really wanted to speak particularly to the people who dissented so that they had a space to receive information from folks like Gary Schneider that they might not otherwise have had access to. So it was really a model for the political process.
And that's what the Board of Selectmen tries to do on every issue. I mean, we really pride ourselves, and I'm proud of, you know, my colleagues. We differ. You know, you'll see the process as we discuss things. We don't always agree. We're not always on the same side of an issue. But we talk about it, you know, we look at both sides, we think, you know, we respect our colleagues, we say, gee, there's a reason they're opposed to my perspective. I wonder if they've got a thought there. I wonder if I should see it from their perspective. And once we vote, the vote carries, the majority carries, and then we support that, and we make sure that that initiative or that vote carries successfully through and benefits the town. So, you know, you never see on our board any, you know, begrudgingness, or, you know, there's always, you might be disappointed, oh shucks, I didn't get that vote, or, you know, I really wished it had gone a different way. But we're committed to, you know, making sure that the board works well, and I think that this question has a lot of parallels in the community to that effort, that once the vote is taken, I think everyone will come together and make sure that the absolute best product is installed and the kids are all healthy and happy, and then we'll be on to the next project.
And by extension, what we see happening on the Board of Selectmen, we're seeing it occur on the other boards and commissions as well. So in this particular race, every one of the contests are committees that are 5 members or more. So no one one is occupying a single seat, they're joining a collaborative exercise.
Absolutely.
And so I know we have a package that we're getting ready to review, but I'd be curious to see how your take on how these minute changes might affect these boards going forward with some of the issues that we have that we'll be facing.
Well, you know, the Board of Selectmen has done more joint meetings, and now the committees are having their own joint meetings. For example, on accessory apartment, you know, they've come together, and when there's a new person voted in or a new committee member that's appointed or joins a board, it's always a good mix-up. It's always nice to have a different perspective, a fresh idea. It puts everyone even more on their game, gives them a whole nother set of ideas and ideals to think about from that person. And in Falmouth, what I've seen, there's a lot of generosity of the committee who has the institutional history to welcome that person and to make them comfortable and to let them know, you know, this is the way the committee works. You know, we have, we've got mission statements, we have workbooks at Town Hall in terms of how do you get to know how a committee works. And when we interview folks, we always say, well, gee, did you have a chance to take a look at the committee? And that's really just to gauge, you know, a little bit of the fit to make sure that the person knows what the mission of the committee is that they want to join. And, you know, I think that there's always more to be done. There's always updates and improvements that can be done. And that's another thing that this Board of Selectmen has been, you know, working on listening. We've had some listening sessions just to be sure that, you know, we're not stagnant and we're not thinking that the way it's currently done is always the best way. Because, you know, you look around, look back again at children, at the high school students, they come up with brand new ideas that you know, are always should be considered to be adopted. I think about Troy and, you know, when he was town manager in Hanover, I flat out tell people, I steal ideas from you. Pam Harding Barrett was talking about a social she had, and I stole that idea. I mean, it's I credit, you know, after I steal, but it's just, you know, I think that you've got to always be looking for new ideas, try them out, see if they work. If you fall flat on your face, well, you know, maybe don't do that again. But if you don't try it, you don't know.
You have to have the courage to try.
And you have to have the team behind you to support those ideas, and that's what we have in Falmouth.
We do indeed.
Indeed.
It's a nice segue into our next package. Dylan Fernandez is going to be talking again about question number 1.
Great.
Let's see what we have.
Hi, I'm Dylan Fernandez, State Representative for Falmouth, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket. I'm a Falmouth resident, lifelong Falmouth resident. I voted today. So important that everyone turns out and votes today. We have a lot of items on the ballot, from local election to different town positions to the turf fields on the ballot. And it's just really important that everyone turn out in their democracy. The health of our community is dependent upon people raising their voices and sharing their concerns and getting out and going to the polls and making their voices heard. So I was thrilled to vote today. I also gave someone a ride to the polls today, which was a lot of fun. It was a 92-year-old needed a ride to the polls. That he was actually at precinct 1 where I vote, but he was supposed to vote at precinct 2. And so I drove him over here, and you know, that's part of the reason why we're standing in front of Gus Candy. Not where I vote, but where I drop someone off. We are so fortunate in Falmouth to have a really committed, dedicated police force that puts their life on the line to protect us every day. You know, every resident of Falmouth and our country has a right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and our police put their lives on the line to protect ours. They put their lives on the line to protect our liberties and our freedoms, and they put their lives on the line to make Falmouth a happier, more vibrant, engaging, open place to live. So we're just here to honor them and their sacrifice that they do every day. And then also, I think it's really important to honor their families and the small sacrifices they commit to every day, because, you know, there's a lot that weighs on a family when someone in your family is a service member. So we're just here to honor them, and it was a really beautiful ceremony put on by the chief and the town.
And thank you to State Representative Dylan Fernandez for that recap, not only of the political process, but of that wonderful ceremony for the Law Enforcement Memorial today at the Falmouth Police Department. I had the privilege to be there today at that ceremony, and it was moving. Even though Falmouth has only lost one officer in the line of duty, and it was back in 1933, it was still very poignant. Members of Officer Pierce's family were there at the ceremony today, and there was a nice show of support from elected officials and members of the public to remind us of the sacrifice, not only of our men and women that wear the uniform every day, but of their families who are prepared every day to make that sacrifice. So it was a great event, and thank you to Dylan for providing us that information.
Good, and we're back.
And we are back.
And we did a little musical chairs in the interim. And we have a new guest with us. Bob Leary from the Planning Board is with us. You're running for re-election.
Yes, I am.
And let's have a little conversation. How's everything going for you today?
Beautiful day. Every day is a good day. You know, I have been volunteering with Habitat for Humanity, so that's where I spent my day today. And rushed home, grabbed a shower, something to eat, and here I am.
How long have you been serving on the Planning Board now?
I believe it's 9 years.
9 years.
Yeah. It goes by fast. And time flies when you're having fun.
Indeed.
Yeah.
We almost have some early results ready to come in here. Not quite yet. We'll bring them to you live from Town Hall. But Bob, your career in public service extends well beyond your time on the Planning Board. You were a career educator and really dedicated decades of service to this town. So we thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, 30 good years. I have a stepdaughter now who's a teacher, and I think hanging around with me, she kind of got the bug, and she's teaching chemistry in Nyack, New York. And teaching is a tough profession, but it's also a very rewarding profession, and it just suited me really well for what I taught. And I encourage people to go into it. It's a great career.
Outstanding. And your work on the Planning Board has evolved over the years. Maybe talk a little bit about one of the probably hottest topics of the last year or so on the Planning Board, and that's the accessory apartment bylaw. And walk us through that and where we're at with that right now.
Well, I think everybody knows that it came as a result of the housing demand study by Judy Barrett. And we looked at it as one of the low-hanging fruit that we could pluck. And what we did essentially was take the old bylaw and we just tweaked it a little bit. We eliminated the affordability deed restriction on it. We increased the square footage that was allowed, and we also allowed it to go into detached structures. But all the rest of it is pretty much the same. The requirements for it to be owner-occupied for 7 months, and it can't be a summer rental and things of that nature, because we hear a lot about aging in place. And you have someone who has a house, they don't want to give it up and move someplace else, and they have space to maybe carve out a little apartment that they could rent out to help them in their later years, and also to allow younger people a place to move into where, when I came to Falmouth, the days where you had winter rentals and you go into a house with a bunch of people and you'd live there for the winter and then you'd fend for yourself in the summer. But being able to have a bunch of people in a place made it a little more affordable, but that doesn't seem to be the norm anymore. That has kind of gone away, because a lot of our homes now are weekend homes, second homes for people. So that market really isn't available for people. So we figured that carving out this accessory apartment bylaw might make some units more affordable for people just through the market. The market would dictate, based on square footage, how much someone could charge for rent and make it available for younger people.
So, Bob, I was struck during town meeting, the stretch code was defeated.
Mm-hmm.
Give us your thoughts on the process, not the voting of town meeting,
Right.
but the stretch code itself.
The stretch code, as a builder, we're striving for net zero houses. And we're doing that by choice, my organization, Habitat for Humanity. And the energy codes are getting stricter and stricter and stricter anyway, so I really didn't see what the stretch is to go to a stretch code. I think it's beneficial. It has a lot of support for it through different organizations. You read the publications in the trades and everything, and it's more and more becoming where houses are going to have to be pretty self-sufficient, whether you're supplying your own electricity, whether you're using less electricity, less energy, whether it's through gas or oil or whatever. We need to make buildings tighter and more energy efficient, and I felt the stretch code was the way to make everyone do it, despite the fact that the codes are getting stricter and stricter.
So I believe, I think I heard something about some of the returns that were coming in. I got a garbled message in my ear.
Yes, indeed. We do have results from Precinct 1, so let's go live to Deb Rogers at Town Hall, and we will get those results.
Hi, Jay. Hi, Troy. Good to be with you tonight. I have, whoops, it's first time up here. I've got Michael Palmer here with me, and let me just get my camera set here. We do have some results from Precinct. Good to be with you again.
Hi, Deb. How you doing? Hi, Troy. Hey, Jay. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Michael's going to give us some of the results from Precinct 1 now. After his phone's ringing, after he hangs up, I know what it is. I guess he's got to take that. So I'm gonna give you some results from Precinct 1 while he goes and gets that call. So it looks like on the planning board, we have Robert Leary and Charlotte Harris are the two top vote getters. Let's see, Falmouth Housing, maybe he's coming back. Of course, Sari, and for Selectman, Doug Jones with 737 votes. I think Michael's going to come back, they'll give us the rest.
Okay, this is just the election results from Precinct 1, and actually for Selectman, Doug Jones had 737 votes, a little over 500 votes difference between Doug and Mark in that precinct, and then Alexander Gessen coming up at the end. And the question received 573 to 442, so a slight edge for yes on question 1 there.
So that's pretty much in keeping what they were talking about in the studio in terms of question 1. I think they were thinking that it was going to go to the positive, so already for Precinct 1, we have a yes on question 1 with that 573. So a number of yeses.
Right, and that's probably predictable for Doug Jones, who was from Precinct 1 and probably receives a lot of his support from that precinct. So we'll see how East Falmouth and Walkwood do and can bring Mark any closer. That's a lot of votes to overcome, but we'll see how the night goes.
Right. We also have some results from Precinct 1 from the library trustees.
Yep, it looks like Kathleen Murray was re-elected to 689, and Margaret Fennell with, well, not re-elected at this point because these are just Precinct 1 figures.
That's
so
right.
Just out of Precinct 1, she was the top out of the field of 4, followed by Margaret Fennell and looks like Katie Mount, and then Michael Krogan came in 4th there.
Right. And school committee?
School committee, it looks like, again, Kelly Welch received the most votes, again, an incumbent, with Natalie Canelopoulos coming in 2nd, James Newman coming in 3rd, and John Fenari a little bit further back and 4th.
Right. So we'll be waiting for some more results.
Okay.
Any surprises here, or pretty much what you expected at this
Pretty
point?
much what I expected. I expected the question 1 to have support in Precinct 1. I expected Doug Jones to have the support in Precinct 1. Just we'll see what the East Falmouth precincts bring in terms of market picking up any of that, the difference, almost a 500 vote difference now.
Right.
So that's a lot to overcome, but we'll see what East Falmouth and Walkaway do for him.
Great, thank you. We'll
All
see you in a little bit with
Great.
some more
Take
results.
care.
So that's Precinct 1, and as soon as we have some more in, we'll get back to you.
Okay. So I'm not certain, was that a recap of all of the votes in Precinct 1, or was that up to the minute?
No, that was, so those were the final tallies
Finals.
for 1 out of the town
Gotcha.
9 precincts. And so
Interesting.
congratulations thus far. It looks like things are trending your way, Bob. That's good.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's get back to the interesting work that you're doing on the planning board. Another one of the components that I've always been intrigued with, and that's the local comprehensive plan, the master plan.
Yes.
Where are we on that? What's the vision? Where are we going? Where are you leading? Share some thoughts.
Well, right now, it's been written, completed, and the whole design of that plan was to allow it to be flexible enough so that we have the overall goals and policies. They're universal. They're a large umbrella. What is in the nitty-gritty are the action items. And those are meant to be a checklist of, okay, we want to get this done. Check that off. Something else comes along, we put that in. And at this point, we are going through a review of all the elements. We're calling people in and saying, okay, how are we doing with this? What do we need to revise? What do we need to eliminate? Should we add another element? So that's the focus right now. And we've just reconvened recently, and we'll be meeting again next Wednesday. We're going to be meeting with wastewater and water next week. So
Bob, to the best of my memory, the last comprehensive plan is dated 2007, right? So what is the process now with the master plan? How does it become part of the fabric of the town's initiative and planning? What other steps have to be taken as you're working your way through this checklist?
well, we consider it to be the master plan.
Right.
And how it intertwines with the strategic plan. I think we looked at the strategic plan when we were writing the local comprehensive plan, and I think it's going the same way too. People are, when they're devising their plans, are looking at the LCP and saying, okay, how does this mesh with our long-range goals? Because remember, we had to look 50 years down the road, which isn't easy. Things change, and so trying to be open-minded about that and really taking into account a lot of research. Our former assistant town planner, Colleen McCullum, really gave us a lot of homework when we were writing this plan. We studied a lot about a lot of different issues, whether it was complete streets, whether it was coastal resiliency, form-based code, all those things. And those are kind of in the works now, and little bits of it come out at our meetings. And I think with the Davisville, the Davis Straits rather, Davis Straits reset, we're looking at those things. Where do we put our density? Where do we want to institute form-based code? Things like that. So the use of the Cape Cod Commission came out of this plan, because I'm sitting there and I'm wondering, we pay all this money to the Cape Cod Commission and we've got all these action items, and there's so much that the Cape Cod Commission can do for us. And so we've commissioned them to do the Davis Straits study. We want to do a Davisville study. They've done the Woods Hole historical. So there's we're getting a lot of use out of the Cape Cod Commission. And to me, that's just good planning. You have a resource, you want to use it, and we've been pretty much on them quite a bit lately to tap into their expertise and not have to go out to other sources all the time. We have sources right here on Cape, and we use them.
So even as the plan is being created in some parts, it's also evolving as projects move along.
Yes.
With the help of the commission and others. When does the master plan come back in front of town meeting?
The only time anything comes back to town meeting is if we add another policy or we add another element to it. So then it would go before town meeting.
And for our viewers, I know for myself, and I want to share this with our viewing audience, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, talks about the various boards and commissions and committees of local government, right? And then we have, of course, the charter, our own charter, that also talks about the planning board. So if you want to read up on the duties and responsibilities of boards such as the planning board, you can go right to the website, town's website, go to the charter, and you'll find that section, I believe, section C4 gives us a breakdown. And that's where I thought I had read something to the effect that it goes not only in front of town meeting, but it also sharing with the Cape Cod Commission.
Well, the Cape Cod Commission kind of lays out a blueprint for what these plans should look like.
Right.
And we didn't feel that their initial blueprint fit Falmouth in what we wanted to do.
Back some years ago.
Yes.
Right.
So we kind of went out on our own to come up with this format that we have, and the Cape Cod Commission actually likes it. In fact, they're thinking of changing their format to this.
Wonderful.
I mean, the beauty of this, if you look at our plan, it's 19 pages back to back, as compared to the old days where it was volumes and volumes, and some of these elements would have 15, 20 pages to them. And what we found out is when we went around asking people, did you ever use a local comprehensive plan? They said, well, maybe for a bookend. People really weren't paying attention to it. And at our meetings, we have people coming to our meetings and quoting the local comprehensive plan. We've heard it at town meeting. We hear it at the selectmen's meeting. So it's an easy document to access because it's on the website, and it's easy to understand and get an idea of what we want to do as a town.
So it's interesting, one of my questions deals with process. Very often when candidates are running for a position, they speak in the singular voice of what I would do if I served on this particular board or commission. And in fact, one has to be collaborative in order to be persuasive, to make one's views the selected position of that group. Tell us about how that process has worked for you over these past 9 years, this collaboration with the other 6 members of the planning board.
I've been very fortunate to have worked with a great group of people, and we have had some pretty diverse characters on that board over the years. And the basic tenet is we all have respect for each other. We can disagree, but at the bottom line is we're all trying to do what we feel is best for the town, and we respect that. And we can disagree, but when the day ends, that respect is still there. Nobody is critical of somebody else just because of their view. And as a result, we've been able to get a lot done. I have to say that the current board for the past few years has probably been the most proactive planning board, where we're really planning. We're not just reacting to things that come before the planning board. We are creating some initiative and some momentum to see what we want to see happen here, rather than sitting back passively and letting things happen to this town.
The planning board has been planning, and for that you deserve a lot of credit, because that really is the fulfillment of the role, not just of reviewing plans, but of planning. So good for you on that, and thank you so much, Bob, for joining us. We do have some folks out on the field that have prepared a package on some exit polling and have talked to some of the voters today about the issues that are important on today's ballot, so let's go to that.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eileen Jensen. We're at Gus Canty Rec Center because it's town election day. I think that there are more people engaged and aware about local issues and local candidates, and more people are realizing that their vote counts and they can make a difference. So we're really trying to get people knowledgeable about local candidates and issues that affect our community. I voted yes on question 1. I think it's a really complicated issue, but for me, I want to move this process forward. I want to support moving the field away from the Gus Canty campus and putting it over at the high school, which I think will support both the senior center and the playground that's going to be displaced. And I really also want to support our youth, and I know that's kind of a catchphrase these days, but it's true. We need to put money into playing fields for them, and even though I do have some concerns about a synthetic field, I think that right now the best thing to do is to vote yes on 1, which is why that's what I did.
Hi, I'm Peggy Zuplat, and I am the new warden for the precinct, and this is my first day, and it's very interesting, and there's a lot to learn from behind the scenes, Well, I supervise to make sure the ballots are all correct when they're going in. If anybody makes a mistake, we have to give them a new ballot. And we double checked if there are any problems with anybody coming in that are not listed on the street rolls, that maybe they hadn't returned the census and hadn't voted recently, so they're inactive or anything like that. And a lot of people, because of the new precinct lines, have been coming in and they're in the wrong precinct, so we have to redirect them to the correct one and everything. So it's a lot of little nitty-gritty things to learn and to follow up on.
Scott Gelfie, lifetime Falmouth resident. As part of the Vote Yes on One committee, I've learned quite a bit on the condition of the fields in town, and that's kind of driven me to take a leadership role in this. Brought together all the youth programs and their organizations, all the high school booster groups, and a lot of the young families in town that really want to see this. Because the fields, again, in this town are in rough shape, and having a synthetic field that the kids can count on, compete on, something we can be proud of, I think is what, most of the younger families in town want to see. Well, there have been some questions raised about, some health concerns regarding the field, but there have been 6 studies in the United States that have been done. They have determined that there are no greater health risks on, with synthetic turf than grass. With the turf fields, you get 3 times the use of the grass field. This would give our high school fields a little, the grass field a little chance to rest. I think start tackling the maintenance with them, and we really need this. We really need this to set us on a good path.
And thank you for that great cross-section of the events and the discussions out at the polls today. We do have another guest in studio, but we're going to jump back to Town Hall to Deb Rogers. Okay, so we're not quite ready for that Town Hall jump yet. That's the beauty of live television. So we do have a guest in studio. We're happy to welcome candidate for the Planning Board, Michael Halen. Michael, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Troy. Thank you for having me, Jay. I want to say hi to my children who are still up past the bedtime, Callan and Rory, and my campaign managers, Anson and Marley. They're grade school kids. That's, they got there for the kids, so.
Wonderful. Well, some of what we talked about, Mike, was that during this election process, this election season, we've really seen the youth of the community come out and get active and have their voices heard and really become engaged in the political process. And whatever the results of the election are tonight, that's something very positive.
Yeah, and I think that it's the question itself. Question 1 directly impacted the youth. Question 1, if it does pass, that field is not going to be built overnight. So this is more so for the youth, 8th grade and younger. So those youth got involved, their parents got involved, and it was a very positive, very positive push towards something that I believe will be a benefit to this town.
So you're a candidate on the ballot tonight for Planning Board. Talk to us about that. What about the Planning Board and planning excites or enticed you to become a candidate?
So as far as the Planning Board goes, when I did run for state rep, I was talking to a lot of marine environmental people, and we had some discussions about coastal erosion, coastal resiliency. And one of the big things right now, the state is pushing for grants for people, for municipalities to do something to fix coastal erosion. And one of the things that Falmouth can do, and I talked to a friend of mine, and we discussed this, is floating wetlands. Floating wetland is just natural habitat for animals, fish, vegetation. You put it off the shoreline, and when waves come to shore that would normally erode the shoreline, they hit the floating wetland, causes less erosion. So there's little things like that that we can do, and that was one of the big things. The other thing with for Planning Board was to protect our conservation land. We did the sewer project to protect all the wetlands, and I just don't want to see us, now that we have sewers, building multi-family units, multi-family subdevelopments just because we have sewer. It's supposed to be a positive, not a net neutral.
So we had one of the other candidates in studio just before you came in and talked a little bit about the accessory apartment bylaw. What's your position on that? Do you support it, or?
I'm all for it, and I talked about this at the debate that you folks hosted at the library, or the League of Women Voters hosted. You guys filmed it. The accessory apartment, I'm all for. The one caveat is that you can't put the accessory apartments in places that are going to negatively impact the environment. So it's a catch-22. We need affordable housing, but we also don't want to, overdevelop, land where it's going to be runoff, septics are going to back up and cause negative impact on the environment. So it's tough, and we're in a tough place. If the whole town was sewered, that'd be a totally different argument where let's put them everywhere. It's great, but because of the environment, it's a tough sell some places in town.
So that balance between environmental sustainability and affordable housing is really one of the most vexing problems that will face the planning board in the months and years to come.
Yes, I mean, and obviously we could, put in multifamily subdevelopments, all over town to solve one issue, but that's only going to create, further worsen the environmental issue. So we have to be very careful how we're doing this, and also the placement of, where we're putting these units, not near our wetlands, near our conservation, that kind of idea.
So should you be successful tonight in your bid for a seat on the planning board, how would you reconcile those difficult public policy issues?
After Precinct 1 came in, we'll see if I'm successful or not. But if I am successful, I think that we have to, and they're working on this now, going over the maps of town and rezoning, residential, business, industrial, agricultural, and kind of figuring out where the best places to put subdevelopments might be, the best places to put business, and then, mixture of both of them and see what we can do.
So as we look at that balance that the planning board is driven towards the physical, the economic, and the environmental development of the community, what does the economic component of it sit in your mind, and how do you leverage it for tomorrow?
So as far as the planning board goes and planning, they talked about the, Rob was just talking about the Davisville lights, Davis Straits lights, I'm sorry. If you have apartments and you have places people to live at Davisville, and you have jobs at the Davis Straits light, people have to get from point A to point B. And one of the things that I'm pushing for, I'm on the rec committee, and we discussed handicap accessibility. The sidewalks, at some point in time, the sidewalks on Main Street stopped being handicapped accessible, and we need to be able to get from the Village Green all the way down to Davisville lights with sidewalks on both sides of the road. We had a bad accident last year. Someone got hit because of the lack of sidewalks in certain parts of town. So there has to be a connection between housing and businesses. People can get jobs, people can go to eat, people can shop. There's a large throughway for 28, but they all have to be connected. They can't be islands upon themselves.
So transportation has always been a real conundrum in our community. How do you see transportation as an overlay to some of the other issues and concerns, the affordable housing, the availability of a active workforce? Where do you see transportation as a component of that?
I know that the bus line comes down 28, and in the summertime the whoosh is from Walmart to Woods Hole. Whoosh is more of just a fun thing to do. But the entirety of 28, there's a way to get from Hyannis to Falmouth up to Bourne. What I would love to see is, and this is not a planning board decision, but I would love to see Cape Flyer run every day of the year. Cape Flyer that goes from Boston to Bourne and Hyannis. If we could reverse that and have people who live in Falmouth get from Falmouth to Boston Monday through Friday, it'd be great. It's a little bit larger than the purview of the planning board. As far as the planning board is concerned, continuing try to make safer bus stops where right now the CRTA is just stopping on the side of the road if they can have some kind of a pull-off like they do in the city. So we have people are safer waiting for the bus, getting on the buses. It doesn't tie up traffic as much.
So Mike, looking at the Cape Cod Commission and its influence on the other towns on Cape Cod, are you seeing anything happening in any of the other municipalities that appeals to you, that attracts you, that there's some traction going on in other towns that you might want to adapt or adopt for our community?
what I would like to, I'd like to see Falmouth make its own decisions, and I kind of, when the hotel was going to be on Lantern Lane, and now that kind of went away, to have the Falmouth selectmen say one thing and the Cape Cod Commission say something contrary, it's not the best thing for our town. As far as what other towns are doing, Falmouth is unique from the other towns in the Cape, obviously, so I really can't speak to that too much.
So should you be successful in your election tonight, again, talk to us about what your priorities would be on day one. What would a planning board seat for Mike Halen look like?
So the planning board has discussed the Davis Straits lights. But what I would love to do, Mike Halen on the planning board, work with the planning board and try to make the 28 look the same as called West Main Street, from Village Green down to the fire station. Let's continue that down 28 to the Davis Straits lights, down to Davisville, because they're doing a lot of construction at these intersections. Let's connect them all, where the schools, businesses, where people eat, work, play. If question 1 does go through, I would like to be working, I'm working now on the inclusive playground at the rec. I know that the Carousel of Lights just got another year at the Mullen Hall Elementary School, but I would like to see that a permanent place along this 28 corridor where you can go from one end to the other and you can walk the whole thing, enjoy a Commodores game, the new senior center, library, all that stuff.
Excellent. I thought we heard that we are ready to go back downtown? No, we're not ready. Okay, we're going to be ready soon to go downtown for some more results. So since we have you here live on FCTV, Mike, I know you're a member of the Recreation Committee, and there have been some discussions about staffing there recently.
Staffing, yes.
Talk to us a little bit about that.
So the Recreation Committee, the Recreation Department, Joe Olenek was just hired as from the acting rec director to the now full rec director. There's been some discussion of taking one of the jobs underneath the rec director and a job underneath the beach commission, the beach superintendent, and making that into one job where half the time that person would work for the beach in the summer, and then during the fall, winter, that person would work for the rec. Nothing's been finalized yet.
Excuse me 1 second, Mike. I'm just going to have to interrupt you. We are finally ready, so we're going to switch. We will come back to you, but we're going to head downtown to Deb Rogers to get results from precincts 3 and 6. Debbie.
Hi, Troy. It's gotten a little crowded here, so I'll need you two to speak up, but we do have some results from 3 and from 6. For precinct 3, Planning Board, we have Charlotte Harris and Robert Leary. And for Selectmen, Mark Finneran with 410 votes to Doug Jones 242 and Alexander Gesson with 74. For the trustees of the Public Library, Kathleen Murray, Margaret Fennell, and Kathy Mount. And on question 1, which is a big one, everybody down here is waiting for these results, 386 in favor and 324 opposed. So that was a little closer than precinct 1. And then for school committee, we have Natalie Cantalopoulos and Kelly Welch and John Fernari. And we'll be sending over the town meeting so that you can get those. We haven't added those up here. And then with precinct 6, which we haven't done yet, I have again Charlotte Harris and Robert Leary with 484 for Charlotte Harris, 432 for Robert Leary. Michael Halen had 389. And then for selectmen, Doug Jones with 404. Mark Finneran had 367 and Alexander Gesson had 94. The Library Board of Trustees, Kathleen Murray, Margaret Fennell, and Kathy Mount. On question 1, we have yes 500 and no 372. So that was a pretty big gap on the yeses. So got quite a few people down here waiting for the results from question 1. And I just got handed precinct 7, so I haven't had a chance to look at these yet, so bear with me if you could, please. Looks like on the planning board, we have Charlotte Harris with 316, Michael Halen with 310, and Robert Leary with 307. So Michael Halen and Charlotte Harris received the most votes from precinct 7 for the planning board. And then we have, for selectmen, we have Mark Finneran with 311, and Doug Jones with 259, and Alexander Gesson with 62. For the Library Board of Trustees, I have Kathleen Murray, Margaret Fennell, and Kathy Mount were the top vote getters there. And for question 1, yes, 336, and no, 303. So that one was a little bit tighter than the last precinct, but still we're coming in with yes votes. And on the school committee for precinct 7, we have Natalie Canelopoulos, Kelly Welch, and John Fernari. So let me see, I have Bob Antonucci over here. I'm going to see if I can get him to come over and talk to me a little bit about precinct 1. So if you can bear with me, and then I see some more results coming out as well. No, Bob, you want me to do the results first? And then yeah. I think he wants to look at the results. So this is precinct 2. You still with me there?
We're here, yeah, you're doing a great job. Keep it up.
Okay, it's a little loud here, so thank you for bearing with me. For planning board, we have Charlotte Harris with 484 and Robert Leary with 391. So those are the top vote getters there. I'm going to go right to question 1 because I know that's the big one everybody's waiting for. So for yes, we have 463 and no 346. So the yes votes have been coming in all night for those. And I heard you talking earlier about the young people out voting, and I think that really trends with what we're seeing across the country too, which has been great. In the school committee, we have Natalie Canelopoulos, 553, Kelly Walsh, 555, and John Fernari with 385. James Newman was pretty close behind with 373, but those three, Fernari, Newman, and Canelopoulos. And then for the Library Board of Trustees, we have Kathleen Murray, Margaret Fennell, Kathy Mount. We'll be sending these over to you so you can get them up and people can see them on the screen. And then for selectmen, we have Doug Jones with 390, Mark Finneran with 319, and Alexander Gesson with 97. So Doug Jones in precinct 2 was the top vote getter. So that's what we have. I'm going to see, once again, I'm going to give it a whirl, see if I can get Bob Antonucci. Let's see. There he is. Hi, Bob. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Thank you for talking with us
Glad
tonight.
to do it.
So you must be pretty happy.
Yeah,
with
we are. I mean, when precinct 1 came in, we were a little nervous because the spread wasn't that great. But as the other precincts came in, we're pretty optimistic. At this point, we're up about 413 votes, so it should carry. And that's a tribute to all the voters in town, and it's a great win for the students in our city and for the elderly who are going to use Fuller Field. So we're pretty happy about it.
Yeah, so your committee did a lot of work getting people out there, educating the community about the field. What do you think was the biggest misconception?
I think the misconception was that the turf field was dangerous, that it was going to hurt students, it was going to hurt people who use the field. And that is a misconception. There's no scientific evidence that that's true. You know, because you're an alum of Fitchburg State University, we did a field there, and in 10 years we had no problems with it. We had fewer injuries, and we got great use for it. And every city and town on the Cape has it, so we're in good shape. So I think the misconception, I understand people's concerns. You know, everybody has their own opinion. We respect that, but we're happy that we came out on top.
And then I've heard from some people that they were concerned about the cost. Can you speak to that?
You know, the cost is no greater than if we had grass fields. The field, the expectancy of the field is about 10 to 12 years. Then you need to put a new carpet on it. So if we put $60,000 away each year for those 10 years, we'll replace it. The cost is no greater than if we had grass fields, yet there's less maintenance. On an annual basis, all you do is have to sanitize it twice a year and fill in the rubber spots and maintain it. And so I think if you look at all the fields that are in in place right now, some of those arguments don't hold any validity.
So what impact do you think some of these younger families had in terms of getting this to where it is at this point? We're not at the finish
Right,
line
yeah.
yet.
Well, I'm
but-
so glad they got involved. I think they realized that it's their children at a young age, that they're investing in our town, and the elderly in the same way. So I think that these younger families, it really energized people. And it was wonderful today. I was on the, out most of the day, and Scott Gelfi, our chair, was out from 7 this morning till it rained tonight, never left his spot. And we saw a lot of young families bringing their children. My grandson Jack voted for the first time this year at age 18, so I think his vote carried the field for us.
There you go.
But that's the lesson. Loads of high school kids came out, and elementary students coming with their parents in the voting booth. I think it does a lot for civic responsibility.
So as a former university president, what do you think that how do you get more young people?
We got to get them active. They have to have an issue to, work for it. And I think we've learned this time from ages 3 to 80 we're involved. We just have to keep at it. It's always somebody else's problem. Well, it's our problem. If we invest in our town and we invest in the quality of life, and we get everybody involved, we're gonna have a much better town. I'm pretty excited about it, and I also want to thank you and your staff at the TV station for the work they do. You provide a wonderful service for this town.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. Thanks
Good.
for being
Thank
on.
you. Yeah.
We also have precinct 4 coming in, so if you're ready, and we'll be sending these over to you as well. Again, I'm just looking at these for the first time. It looks like for planning board, we have Charlotte Harris and Robert Leary. For selectmen, Mark Finneran with 353 votes to Doug Jones 302 and Alexander Gessen with 71. Question 1, yes 430, so that trend holds, and no 300. For Library Board of Trustees, we have Murray, Fennell, and Mount with the top vote getters there. For the school committee, Cantalopoulos, Welch, and Fernari were the 3 top vote getters there. So that's what we've got for now. We're closing in.
Hey, what's up?
All right, great. Debbie, thank you very much. We really appreciate that live information. As the information is unfolding at Town Hall, you're getting it here live here from FCTV. So although all the final results aren't in, as the commentary person on this panel, I'm comfortable making a call here for a comfortable margin of victory for question 1, because it looks like with all of the results that we have in thus far, the number of precincts that are yet to be counted are just not enough to overcome the deficit that exists right now. So here on FCTV, we will call the victory for yes on question 1. That's a yes on question 1. As you can see in that graphic on your screen, right now the yeses are outweighing the noes 56 to 44%, and it just doesn't appear from our crack analytical staff to be mathematically possible to overcome that deficit during this race. The other races are still being counted, but it does look like that Doug Jones is again trending for re-election to the Board of Selectmen, that Mark Finneran, as he has continued to do for the last several years, is making a very respectable showing, but it doesn't appear to be enough to overcome the nearly 500 vote deficit that he saw in Precinct 1. So Mike Halen, back to you. Discuss these results with us. It does look as though for the planning board, that the 2 incumbents will see a victory tonight. You had a very respectable showing.
Thank you.
But I think as we look at those results, there are a couple of precincts yet to be reported, but it looks probably that similar to the question 1, that the trending is for re-election for the incumbents. But congratulations to you on running a very positive, a very thoughtful and an issues-based race. That's something we've been talking about tonight that's really important, that our community have a positive discourse, and you deserve credit for that.
Thank you. And then question 1, passing is a huge, one of the most important things in the ballot in my mind, probably much more important than my race personally. Getting that field built is something that I can run next year. Getting the field done is more important to get done as soon as possible in my mind.
And my hope is that you continue to be engaged in the planning process, to have your voice heard.
Even if I lose tonight, I'm still on the rec committee, I'm on the cultural commission, so we're still gonna get some stuff done here, cultural council. But yeah, so we'll still do stuff and I'll still be involved. But the field getting built, the most important question on the ballot in my mind, so that's good that if Troy calls it and that's what we're doing, I'm glad to hear that.
Well, it's certainly trending very positively, and again, it looks like the margin that we see right now is really insurmountable. So we're comfortable here at this table anyway, calling yes on question 1. You worked hard on that question, Mike, along with a broad coalition of people here in the community. So that must be very gratifying to have been part of something so positive.
And that's, if question 1 had lost, it would have hurt me a lot more than my own race, because I put a lot of effort into question 1. It's been years now, not just myself, the rec, the school committee, the fields task force, yourself, Troy, you were on the multiple email chains getting stuff done. So that is a very big positive, and that was many years in the making. So to get from where we started years ago to here is a huge positive for the community. And it opens the door for a lot more stuff too, because not just the field, opens up space for the senior center, for the inclusive playground.
That's the important component that
That's
we
it.
really have here. I think you really hit it on the head here, Mike. This decision affects so much more.
Yep.
And in very positive ways as well.
And if question 1 had not passed, we would have had some thinking and planning to do as far as the Dillingham entrance to the possible back entrance to Dillingham, the inclusive playground, the splash park, those kind of things. We would have to figure out how we're going to make these happen. We're question 1 tentatively passing, it makes all those things a lot easier, and it should tie together the Gus Canty complex a lot better with the senior. I just left the senior center meeting earlier today. They're going to present to the selectmen on the 21st, so things are moving along there. Once that gets going, the fields get going. Hopefully everything falls into place very neatly. Hopefully.
So we still have precinct 9, precinct 8, I believe this is 5. Let's find out.
Yes, and so
In a few seconds.
your premonition was correct, Jay. And so we're going to go back to Town Hall to Deb Rogers for some more results.
9, precinct 9. No, there were so many people.
Okay, we'll come back to studio. Again, the beauty of live TV, this is unfolding before your eyes. So in about another 30 seconds or so, we'll be back to Deb at Town Hall to produce some more results.
But it gives us an opportunity to turn back to Mike and say thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much, not only for running, but for coming in this evening and sharing your thoughts with us as well.
And I'm glad that question was asked. Hopefully, thank you both. I still have a slim chance. And thank you everyone for running. And I will say this, if I may, win or lose, and I've lost a lot of times now, but it's just when you have a contested race, it causes people to talk about it.
It does.
The newspaper, the radio stations, the TV, and if people run unopposed, then you don't have the conversations that I had conversations with Charlotte and Bob and other people in town about the planning board. That wouldn't have happened if I didn't run. So that's kind of, not only being engaged, but asking questions. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And getting involved. There's still a lot of open seats and a lot of boards in town that anyone can join and not have to run. So thank you guys for having me, and have a good rest of the show.
And thanks for being here, Mike. And that probably is the most important message you'll hear tonight, and that is get involved. There's lots of opportunities for it. Even if you don't run for office, there's committees on which to serve. And so that's the message. Be engaged and be part of the solution. We now will go back live to Town Hall to Deb Rogers and our erstwhile town clerk, Michael Palmer.
That looks like Michael Palmer.
Yeah, thanks, Jay and Troy. I do. I have Michael here. Michael's got the totals, and I'm going to have him get right into it.
Hi, how you doing? Doug Jones was returned to the Board of Selectmen by a very close margin, about 600 votes. Mark Finnan was obviously second, and Alexander Gessen third. The question, the yes won by about 1,000 votes, 3994 to 2893. In some of the other races, we'll go through quick. Kathleen Murray, and the trustees of Public Library, Kathleen Murray received the most votes, Margaret Fennell, I'm sorry, and Kathy Mount received the third place finish. From the planning board, Charlotte Harris was returned to the planning board, and along with Rob Leary and Michael Halen, a third. Sandra Boudreau actually was running unopposed. What am I missing?
Did we get school committee?
School committee, okay. Sorry about this.
That's okay.
Okay.
We're live.
With the school committee, it looks like Natalie Canalopoulos and Kelly Welch a second, and a John Benari a third place finish. And we were electing 3. So, and James Newman came in a close score.
So those are our final results. Can you give us an idea of what percentage voted here?
29.7% total, so that's pretty high for a local election.
You think it was question 1 that really drove a lot of the vote?
I think so. I think a lot of people, younger families, got out and voted, which typically don't vote because there was interest in that, and I think they really rallied their vote, the people that were in favor of this question 1.
Right, I was talking to Bob Antonucci about getting some of these younger voters out and how we really inspire them, and I think this question really did inspire them to get out and vote. So thank you back to the studio, do you have any questions for Michael?
No, another great job by our town clerk. So it's great to see these results, as always, tallied efficiently. Debbie, you do have Mark Finneran right over Michael's shoulder. Maybe you could grab him for a live interview.
I do. I can give it a whirl. They said thank you, great job, and they appreciate you coming out and giving us the results first.
All right.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna give it a whirl. I'm sort of attached here, but let me see what I can do.
Stranger, how are you? It's been a long time. Same here. Everybody's good.
So Debbie is trying to get Mark Finneran, who was unsuccessful in another bid for the Board of Selectmen, but according to our town clerk, made a very respectable showing. And so there are the results. Tonight was the night for incumbents, Jay. It looks like all of the incumbents on the ballot were reelected, although there were some races that were closer than others. And as we had predicted and then called before the results were in, question 1 cruised to a very comfortable margin, winning by some 1,000 votes. And so the people of Falmouth have spoken. Although the fact that 7 out of 10 people chose to stay home and not vote today, 30% turnout in a local election is higher than normal. So what we talked about at the beginning of this show about civic engagement and people becoming part of the process, particularly young people, I think that bore out in these results, and it's very encouraging because hopefully those young people will stay involved and stay engaged.
That's the part that I'm drawn to the most. The words young people showed up, turned out, they were represented. I really like that. I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
We had close to 30% turnout. And there was an issue here that galvanized the community, and they showed up en masse. Very good.
They sure did. And our staff here at FCTV is always striving to improve the quality of the information that's provided to you, the viewers. And so tonight, we'll talk about the results as you see them resulted graphically right on your screen. So as you can see in the race for selectmen, pretty clear victory. I'm just going to stand here to see the results. For Doug Jones over Mark Finneran, a respectable showing again by Mark. He's been a candidate several times here in Falmouth and continues to make a strong showing. As Michael Palmer, the town clerk, said at the very beginning, that margin of victory in Precinct 1 really carried Doug, and it was a very close race otherwise here for the Board of Selectmen. Trustees of Public Library, so elect 3. Again, the incumbent Kathleen Murray was reelected, and she'll be joined on the board by Margaret Fennell and Kathy Mount. Former trustee Michael Corrigan, looking to come back on the board, was not successful, but Mike Corrigan has certainly a stellar career and a history of not only civic involvement here in Falmouth, but around the globe. And so
highly qualified individuals, all 4.
Indeed. School committee, so incumbents Kelly Welch and John Fernari were returned to the board, and they'll be joined by political newcomer Natalie Kanellopoulos, who but comes from a family who's been involved in this community for decades, and she ran a very, very positive campaign. It's great to see someone jump in and get involved, as we talked about tonight, and she actually, as a first-time candidate, was the top vote getter. So that's very impressive and bodes well for her future in electoral politics here in Falmouth.
And I'd have to believe that she made a very positive mark when she was on the PTA.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. And again, as we discussed on the planning board, the two incumbents, Charlotte Harris and Robert Leary, coasting to be reelected to that board. But Mike Halen, who sat in studio here with us and was philosophical in his defeat, but remained steadfast that he'll stay engaged, and he volunteers on several committees. And so that's the kind of candidate you want to see.
We'll see Michael coming back again, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And finally, question one, as you can see there, a very comfortable margin, 58% to 42%. The actual number of votes, just over 1,000 was the margin of victory there. So the message got out, the activism, people got to the polls. I'd hazard a guess that the reason for nearly 30% turnout was a lot of first-time voters that got to the polls and really had their voices heard. So again, a good night for the incumbents tonight, but a better night for Falmouth, because people had their voices heard, and here we sit after a very positive.
So let's go back to Town Hall. I think Debbie's got another interview for us.
Sounds good.
Okay, here we go. Hi, yep, we're back. I'm here with Mark Finneran, who had a very respectable showing tonight. And Mark, this is your 6th time running for selectman.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, tell me what drives you to do this.
Nobody else does what I do.
So what do you feel that you know, because you're right, in a way, nobody does do what you do, but can you talk about what it is that you'd like to see going forward? You have a real vision, I think, for Falmouth.
Going forward?
Yeah, I mean, what would you like to see?
First off,
What do
I'd
you
like
see
to
for
see,
yourself?
I'd like to see more people vote. That would help, especially if you voted for me. But, you know, I mean, there's certain precincts that don't vote as well as others, you know? I mean, there's equal number of people in each one. I mean, they should show up the same way. I mean,
So what do you think we can all do better to get people in some of these other precincts? I know you really, you know, are inspiring people to vote more than they have in the past. What more can sort of we as a community do to get the vote out?
if I knew, I'd be in a different situation, you know? There's more, there's other things. I never really ran a professional campaign, you know? Do a little more of that next time, you know, if there is a next time, and I'm assuming there will be, because, like I said, who else does what I do?
So your
Who else
plan
is counter to what goes on here, you know?
So your plan is to go ahead and run again
No, I'll
next
be
year?
in the same seat next Monday as I have been for, you know, forever.
So,
Unfortunately, that won't change.
so your work on the solid waste committee, you know, you've been doing a lot over the last couple of years, you and Linda Davis and some of the other people on the committee. Can you just talk a little bit about some of what you've been doing? Because there's been a lot more education going on around.
Yeah,
town.
well, I mean, I believe that committees need new blood. We got Linda Davis in as chairman, and things changed. You know, more gets done. It's not that people stagnate. I think there should be a 10-year term limit on all committees. I mean, if you really want to serve the town, go on to the next one, because things can stagnate. And if her performance, well, her performance is an indication, you know? I mean, sometimes it's frustrating, but, you know, I mean, I know there's a place for what I do. I mean, and I know that I've accomplished things. I mean, like, who's passed more town meeting articles than I have? Right? How many town meeting articles have any of the selectmen we have now even put forward? I think everyone should participate more.
So that'll be our goal for the coming year, is we're going to try to get some more people out to vote. I want to thank you for what you do and for coming and talking to us now. I'm going to send this back to the studio.
So, thank you, Deb, very much. We had a great turnout from Town Hall. Deb corralled all of that information for us and got it to us very timely. Troy, this is another season, another year. We've done it again. And your prognostications turned out right on the spot. That took courage, my friend. Took courage to call that shot so early.
Well, that's why we're here. And, you know, I think after a while you get to understand the dynamics and you understand how the town shakes out electorally. So, you know, sometimes it's just a guess, but I think tonight it was an educated guess. Speaking of courage, though, I would like to reflect for a moment on that interview that Deb just conducted, because I agree with Mark Fenneran that there is a place for him in this community.
Sure.
You know, he talked about town meeting articles. Here's a guy who has been relentless, but in a good way, relentless towards pushing for transparency in government and a more responsive government. And I will give credit for this government, particularly under the leadership of Chairman Sue Moran, for being that responsive, transparent government. But part of that is because people like Mark, and particularly Mark, have played a role in that. You know, he introduced a town meeting article to have a regular legal report to the town meeting members, the elected legislature of this community. He introduced another article, or has led the discussion, to have the selectmen's packets available to the public before the meeting.
Right.
So because of the presence of this one person, and it's proof that one person can make a difference, our government is more responsive and more transparent. And so I think it's important to recognize and certainly congratulate Doug on a very positive campaign, and he has served honorably for several years. But there's a role for everyone in this government and in this community, and I think it's important to recognize that.
And as we congratulate all of the candidates that ran a very positive race, like you, I reflect on Mark Finneran's efforts over and over again. The refrain that runs through my mind is he shows up, he's there, and he has become effective. So I think, as he said, what else is he going to do? He'll be here again, and we'll be watching him, and let's see where he takes this into the future. I think it's been a very well contested race. I think the one issue skewed the numbers of the turnout. I regret and lament that if it were not for the one question, I fear that the turnout would have been much lower indeed. To our discredit, and if that's what it takes, so be it. We got a good turnout, and isn't it ironic that we're happy with 30%, right? And if Mark's wish comes true, many more people will come out in the future.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, as always, Jay, it's a pleasure to be here with you live in studio, bringing election results to the people of Falmouth. It's great to be able to just talk about the issues, and my congratulations, as always, to the staff and the volunteers here at FCTV who put in countless hours to be able to bring you these live shows. You know, we're the talent on the screen, but there's a lot more talent behind the cameras that's able to bring this to the people of Falmouth.
Thank you for showing up as well. Thank you very much for joining us. This has been a very interesting evening. Thank you, Troy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jay. This is Jay Zavala. I am Troy Clarkson. It's been our pleasure to bring you this live election coverage here for Election Night 2018. Lord willing, we will be back next year for Election Day. And in the meantime, stay engaged, stay involved, and be well, Falmouth.